The most spectacularly successful political doctrine that swept into power in countries around the world in the 20th century was Marxism, based on the implicit presumption that differences in wealth were due to capitalists growing rich by keeping the workers poor through exploitation. This version of the invincible fallacy apparently seemed plausible to people in many different countries and cultures. But if the wealth of rich capitalists comes from exploitation of poor workers, then we might expect to find that where there are larger concentrations of rich capitalists, we would find correspondingly larger concentrations of poverty. But the hard facts point in the opposite direction. The United States has more than 5 times as many billionaires as Africa and the Middle East put together, yet most Americans, including those living below the official poverty line, have a far higher standard of living than that of the populations of Africa and the Middle East. It would be difficult to find even a single country ruled by Marxists where the standard of living of working-class people has been as high as that of working-class people in a number of capitalist countries. This is despite the fact that the first and largest of the avowedly Marxist countries, the Soviet Union, was one of the most richly endowed nations in the world when it came to natural resources, if not the most richly endowed. Yet the standard of living of ordinary people in the Soviet Union was nowhere close to the average standard of living of ordinary people in most of Western Europe or in the United States or Australia. But here, as elsewhere, hard facts have been repeatedly trumped by heady visions, such as that presented in the Communist Manifesto. Other non-Marxist doctrines have been built on the same foundation of assumptions, and they too have had their sweeping political triumphs in the 20th century, usually in the form of expansive welfare states in the second half of that century, with the 1960s being their pivotal, triumphant decade. Hypothesis testing has usually played a remarkably small role in these intellectual, legal, and political developments. Indeed, scholars who have tested prevailing views against hard data and found the prevailing views lacking have often encountered hostility and demonization rather than counter-evidence. Riots to prevent their speaking have disgraced many of the most prestigious academic campuses in the United States, indeed, especially such campuses. While annual income statistics for individuals avoid some of the problems of household income statistics, both of these sets of statistics count as income, 1, annual salaries earned in a given year, and 2, income from capital gains accrued over some previous span of years and then turned into cash income during a given year. Treating the incomes earned by some individuals over various numbers of years as being the same as incomes earned by other individuals in just one year is like failing to distinguish apples from oranges. Capital gains take many forms from many different kinds of transactions. These transactions range from sales of stocks and bonds that may have been bought years earlier to sales of a home or business that is increased in value over the years. If a farm was purchased for $100,000 and then, 20 years later, after the farmer has built barns and fences and made other improvements to the land and the structures on it, the farm is then sold for $300,000, that sale will result in a net increase of the owner's income by $200,000 in the particular year when the farm is sold. Statistically, that $200,000 that was earned over a period of 20 years will be recorded the same as a $200,000 salary earned by someone else in just 1 year. Looking back, that farmer has in reality earned an average of $10,000 a year for 20 years, as increases in the value of the farm through the investment of time, work, and money on the farm. Looking forward, the farmer cannot expect to earn another $200,000 the following year, as someone with a $200,000 annual salary can. Capital gains in general are recorded in income statistics as being the same as an annual salary, when clearly they are not. Nor is there some easy formula available to render salaries and capital gains comparable, because capital gains by different individuals accrue for differing numbers of years before being turned into cash income in a given year. If capital gains were equally present at all income levels, say 10% of all incomes being capital gains, then the disparities in income statistics might not be affected much. But in reality, low annual incomes are far more likely to be salaries, and very high annual incomes are far more likely to be capital gains. While people making $20,000 a year are probably getting that from a salary, people making $20 million a year are more likely to be making such a sum of money from capital gains of one sort or another. The exceptionally high rates of turnover of people at very high income levels reinforce this conclusion. Internal Revenue Service data show that half the people who earned over $1 million a year at some time during the years from 1999 and 2007 did so just once in those 9 years. This does not imply that all the others in that bracket made $1 million every year. Another study, also based on tax data, showed that among Americans with the 400 highest incomes in the country, fewer than 13% were in that very high bracket more than twice during the years from 1992 to 2000. The highest incomes are usually very transient incomes, reinforcing the conclusion that these are transient capital gains rather than enduring salaries. All of this distorts the implications of income statistics that treat annual salaries and multi-year capital gains as if they were the same. Talk of how much a country's income is received by the top 10% or top 1% proceeds as if this is a given set of people, when, because of the high turnover in high income brackets, there can be thousands of people in the top 400 during just one decade. When incomes received by thousands of people are reported statistically as if these were incomes received by hundreds of people, that is a several-fold exaggeration of income disparities.